3 years ago, a woman named Virginia began cheating on her husband Gerald. At that point, their marriage was 12 years old. The couple had a daughter. Virginia had a secret affair and began to distance herself from her husband. Gerald began to suspect something amiss and installed a video surveillance system at home. He even hired a private investigator, but his efforts were fruitless. Virginia seemed to realize her mistake, and after that, it was as if their marriage had returned to happier days. They lived in such prosperity for 3 years, which resembled a real fairy tale. But the past feelings were back on Virginia's mind. Hi, my name is Gerald. Together with my wonderful wife, we have experienced 15 years of marriage filled with accomplishments. However, my greatest asset to me is our daughter Deborah. I am willing to do everything possible and more to ensure her happiness and well-being. At a glance, our life seems like a fairy tale. A house, several cars, quality clothes and groceries. Everything I could have dreamed of as a child has become a reality. My parents have always been each other's support, and I thought our life was perfect right now. However, things have changed. 3 years ago, I began to suspect my wife of cheating. Her behavior became cold, and the words "I love you" sounded mechanical. There was almost no intimacy left in our relationship. She was often confused about whether she was at home or not. All this created an atmosphere of misunderstanding. I thought it was my paranoia, wrong assumptions. How could I even think that my wife was cheating on me? It seemed stupid and irrational. I wrote it off to depression, which I thought could happen to anyone. But now it's clear that I was a fool to let those excuses overshadow reality. 3 years ago, our drama began, and now it has turned into a major tragedy. It has recently come to light that 3 years ago, my wife Virginia cheated on me with one Justin. Their affair lasted a few months, after which Virginia, as if nothing had happened, decided to return to our married life. I happened to learn some of the details while browsing my wife Virginia's Instagram page. She posted a swimsuit picture from our vacation in California. In one of the photos was a man who looked like Justin, who was not on her list of followers. A coincidence seemed unlikely. Justin seemed to be the one who asked my wife to dance. Fate. Without scrolling down his page to the 2020 photos, I found proof. Virginia and I were having relationship problems at the time, and she liked his photos. Things seemed to be starting to get better, and I began to realize that my suspicions from 3 years ago might not have been so unfounded. If I had known about her cheating back then, maybe we would have gotten divorced a long time ago. And now that everything had resurfaced with renewed vigor, I wondered if Virginia had been cheating on me all those 3 years ago. The thought gave me goosebumps. I devised a plan. When Virginia went to shower, I planned to grab her phone and go through her correspondence with Justin from when it all started. However, when I tried to log into her phone, it was locked and the password I thought I knew was wrong. This only heightened my suspicions. When Virginia got out of the shower, we had our usual evening and went to bed. I decided not to ask about the phone since I had never been interested in it before, and she even gave me the password, which turned out to be wrong. The situation was increasingly confusing to me. It had been 4 hours since we went to bed, but my eyes remained wide open. My thoughts were swirling around in my head, and I felt that something was wrong. Virginia was deeply asleep, and suddenly a brilliant idea occurred to me. I have a friend named Ralph, a true technology fanatic whose house is literally littered with gadgets, from phones and tablets to computers and appliances. Why wouldn't I go to his place and try to hack into my wife's phone? I was aware of the risk, and I didn't rule out that Ralph might just kick me out, because coming to his house in the middle of the night wasn't the most graceful gesture. But it didn't matter at that moment. Quietly getting out of bed, I pulled myself together, grabbed my wife's cell phone, and headed for the basement. There was a bottle of expensive whiskey stored there, bought in Paris. I figured it would make a great gift for an upcoming favor. When I arrived at Ralph's house, it was 2:15 in the morning. I started ringing and knocking, but Ralph didn't respond. Deciding not to make any noise so as not to wake the neighbors, I quietly snuck into his house. Ralph was a former classmate of mine. We went to the same school, but we didn't socialize much. He was always busy with his gadgets. Despite the lack of intimacy, the last time I saw him was 2 years ago when I'd brought him an old broken refrigerator, which made him very happy. As I was about to leave Ralph's house at 3:45 a.m., he convinced me that there was a way to open the conversations and messages on my phone. He offered to do it for $300. Although I began to doubt his sincerity, I finally agreed and gave him the money. An hour later, I learned that my wife had created 8 hidden folders of photos and videos, each protected by its own password and uniquely named. The dialogues were even more difficult to recover, but we managed. Ralph received $10 for recovering each dialogue. The trip to see Ralph ended up costing me $660 plus a bottle of whiskey. I realized I was probably overpaying and he was probably trying to scam me, but it didn't matter. The price didn't matter to me then, as I wanted to find out the truth at any cost. When the clock showed 5 in the morning, I had another 4 hours before Virginia needed to get up and go to the gym. That gave me time to uncover the truth. When I got home, I began to scrutinize each of those tangled folders. Each folder contained hundreds of intimate photos and videos of my wife cheating on me with different men. Each folder corresponded to a different man. I started copying all the material and it was painful. I cried. I was filled with emotion. I was afraid I wouldn't be able to contain myself and I'd take it out on my wife as soon as she woke up. Imagine, my wife Virginia cheated on me 3 years ago, and all this time she pretended everything was fine. As a result, she had at least 8 lovers on her side, each of whom I now knew. One of them worked as a trainer at the gym my wife went to regularly. Another was a cook at a cafe nearby. A third was a dog breeder, and we even bought a Chihuahua for our daughter from him. A fourth worked as a swimming instructor at a pool where my wife signed up for twice-weekly lessons. The fifth was a DJ at a local club. The sixth was a gardener. The seventh turned out to be a cab driver who regularly drove my wife home while I was at work. The eighth worked as a massage therapist who my wife went to twice a week. I couldn't believe it. It was so difficult. How is it possible that she makes time for everyone? The scariest part was that she could see all of them on the same day. I fell into a stupor. How is this possible again? Do you believe what you would do if you were me? The time was 8:45. Virginia was supposed to wake up in 15 minutes to go to the gym, then to the pool, afterward to a massage, and then to the same cafe where the same cab driver was supposed to pick her up. Nothing was adding up in my head. I couldn't believe it. I called my business partner and told him I couldn't work today and told him to figure it out on his own because all my thoughts were centered on one thing. My wife had been cheating on me for 3 years with different men I know and to whom she was paying my money. If I had known about the cheating 3 years ago, I would have divorced her and now I could start a new life. I got angry and started thinking of a revenge plan, but before I started, I needed to see for myself. As planned, Virginia woke up at 9 o'clock sharp. The most frustrating part was that she hadn't noticed that I'd been up all night. Apparently, I didn't look that way. On the contrary, I had a lot of energy and more negativity. Virginia asked me why I was still at home. I told her I would be leaving in an hour and a half and offered to drive her to practice, but she declined, saying she would walk by herself. This surprised me because it takes at least 30 to 40 minutes to get to the gym by car. I couldn't believe her even when she said she loved me. I want to go to the bathroom, she said. I tried to hold back. We ate breakfast in silence and then she started getting ready to go out. As I watched her put on her beautiful lacy lingerie and apply her makeup, I had mixed feelings. On the one hand, this was my beautiful wife with whom we had been together for 15 years. On the other hand, in front of me was a woman who had ignored her marriage for fleeting pleasure. From the window, I watched where she was headed. She was walking towards the cafe where I assumed her first lover had been. I hailed a cab and paid the driver for the day, intending to follow her. 10 minutes later, she entered the cafe and spent about 20 to 25 minutes sitting at a table texting someone. At some point, I received a notification from Virginia on my phone. "Honey, I love you so much. Good luck at work." It was the usual morning text she sends every day. A few minutes later, a guy from the cafe staff I knew came over to her table. They chatted, laughed, and at one point kissed. The kiss lasted about 15 seconds. After that, she walked out and got into the same cab where her other lover was. I can't be sure, but it seemed like they kissed the driver on the lips before driving off. I asked the driver to follow them. 20 minutes later, we were outside an expensive motel. We parked next to it and I continued to watch the developments. At this point, another text came in from my wife. She sent air-kissed selfies and wrote that she was walking in the park and would be at the gym in 40 minutes. She added that she loves me and misses me a lot. This further aroused my suspicions. My thoughts were interrupted by the driver who informed me that Virginia had gotten out of the cab with the driver and was headed for the motel. Anxiety swept over me. Was she cheating on me right now? Before that, she had written me passionate messages about her love and boredom, hiding her real whereabouts. An hour later, they went outside. My wife Virginia looked like she had just woken up, but her appearance was surprisingly seductive. Those morbid thoughts of possible infidelity distracted me, but I decided to keep them at bay. Then they went to the gym. She spent a little over half an hour there, even though her workout usually lasted an hour. That made me suspicious. Perhaps she was spending time with a trainer. 20 minutes after she got to the gym, I got a text message about how great her workout was and how she missed me. Yes, I do need to join a gym to get in shape, but that will all be when my business can run without me or with minimal involvement. In fact, the fact that I'm missing a day of work could ruin what I've been building over the last month with the company. So I'm taking a big risk with this stakeout, but I need to get my work done. After practice, her cab driver was already waiting for her. She left, presumably to go swimming, where she spent much more time than she had planned. Meanwhile, she texted me that she was going to cook dinner and offered to buy some nice wine. It was all awkward remembering past moments when I realized that every time she was going to cheat on me, she was texting me friendly messages. It was devastating to my trust. I decided not to wait any longer. When I got home, I found my daughter Deborah spending time with her friends having a party. Knowing that Deborah was my primary concern, I could not allow Virginia to raise her. I immediately decided to divorce by contacting my attorney. I realized the consequences of my decision. The first thing I did was to call my friend, a doctor, and tell him the entire situation in detail. He had to declare my wife Virginia insane in order for her parental rights to be terminated. Only then would I be able to take full custody of our daughter. I had a lot of connections, so it didn't seem unrealizable. I also started sending files with video and photo evidence to all her relatives, parents, siblings, so they would all be aware of her actions. Her parents were religious people, and the information that their daughter, while married, was dating 8 men at once definitely shocked them. I'm sure they would support me. I also learned that the men my wife was dating also had families, making them complicit in her misdeeds. At one point, I wanted to snap and go talk to each of them personally. However, I held back, realizing that I needed to control my emotions in order to stay right. I decided to go through intermediaries and bribe them. Ralph, who helped me hack into my wife's cell phone, sent each of the men an anonymous text message with an offer. Each of them was to testify in court about my wife's inappropriate behavior, blackmail, and outbursts of aggression. For this, they would each receive $5,000 in cash, which was to ensure their silence and that the case would not be revealed to their families. Within minutes of sending the messages, 3 of the 8 men expressed their agreement and asked for further instructions. Soon all agreed to cooperate. Ralph sent them detailed instructions on exactly what to say. Meanwhile, I waited at home for Virginia, who suspected nothing. And if you think I'm going to leave these guys alone, you're wrong. I had a little surprise for them. Each of them was shocked to learn that she had as many as 8 lovers. Evening was approaching and my wife was due home any moment. By this time, all her relatives were already aware of her double life. Her lovers were against her. I sent a man to each of them to discuss all the details. Paradoxically, they were all outraged by her behavior. None of them suspected that she had more than one lover. Frankly, I understood them. I was sure there was something wrong with my wife, because how else could I explain it? Suddenly, I saw a car approaching. It was another cab driver. Virginia got out of the car a little upset and entered the house. On the kitchen table were divorce papers that I had forgotten to put away. Before I arrived, she had texted me 3 more times about how much she missed me and loved me. So I did all of this without remorse. I realized that my feelings were not appreciated. I was caught up in this shit and I couldn't take it anymore. When Virginia saw the divorce papers, she asked what it was. I didn't answer her anything. I just sat down and restrained myself from doing anything unnecessary. She looked at me with a glazed look and started hysterically asking me what was wrong. I ignored her, opened my phone, and started going through all of our photos together. There were over 10,000 of them and each one was precious to me. I stared at them for a while and then highlighted them all and deleted them. It was a hard decision to make. I started deleting everything related to her. Virginia looked at it and didn't realize what was happening. She hysterically begged me to tell her what was going on. I assumed there would be screaming, so I sent our daughter to a friend's house for the night and told her I would explain everything later. Virginia started running around the room saying I had found another one. It was so funny that my wife was accusing me of cheating, even though she herself had cheated on me at least 6 times today with different men. I didn't pay any attention to her. Keeping my composure, I waited for the right moment. But Virginia had gone too far. She grabbed a knife and started threatening me. Honestly, I didn't see it coming, but I realized it could play into my hands. She started cutting up divorce papers, screaming that if I left her, she would do horrible things. I understood her. She didn't work. She had nothing. Everything depended on me, as I had a business and worked hard. I didn't give in to her manipulations. In response, she started threatening me even more. She said that if I didn't stop deleting all our history right now, she would hurt herself with the knife she was holding. But I didn't respond. I realized that if she did anything, it would only make her feel worse. I didn't give in to her provocations. I didn't say anything to her. I didn't respond. I sat quietly on the couch and deleted all the pictures. I knew the conversation was pointless. I knew everything, and deep down, she probably knew it too. In that moment, I saw the real her, the one she'd been hiding for years. I didn't recognize my wife. All my feelings for this girl were gone. I felt she was a stranger to me. All this went on for about 20 minutes. She went on a rampage, broke dishes, and threatened that if I didn't say anything, she would do something to herself. At some point, 8 people came into the house and stood in the living room. They were 8 of her lovers who had agreed to cooperate as long as their wives didn't find out anything. It felt like I was in a movie. Virginia hung up the phone for a moment because she probably didn't expect this turn of events. They were followed by police officers who took the knife away from Virginia and handcuffed her. While the cops were saying she was in custody, I silently got up from the couch and walked over to the refrigerator where a small camera was hidden. I pulled out my phone and showed Virginia the videotape of her running around the apartment with a knife, smashing dishes and threatening me and herself. Her eyes were full of rage. By then, I had already filed Virginia's insanity plea to keep my daughter safe. I invited her lovers into the house so they could see who they were really dealing with and realized they had wasted their time on her. Virginia was taken away for a medical examination. I started packing for our new beginning. 3 months later, the whole ordeal was over. I didn't pay the guys as promised, but they didn't resent it as they realized they were in a difficult situation themselves. I managed to get full custody of my daughter, and Virginia was in compulsory treatment. It turned out she had serious mental health issues and could not control her actions. It got to the point where no outside intervention was required. She had brought herself to this state on her own. Honestly, it didn't bother me anymore. My daughter and I moved, bought a new house. I met a kind and beautiful woman with whom we began to build a new family. My daughter Deborah is happy. As it turned out later, she had known about her mother's behavior for a long time and had been suffering because of it all along. Deborah was afraid to tell me everything, and I was, of course, shocked by the revelation. I had already let the situation go. I can't say that 15 years of my life have been wasted. At least I have a daughter that I love madly. Now that Virginia is in full rehab from her nervous breakdown, I will help her in any way I can, at least get her a place to live and a job. I just want everything to be okay. Thank you for listening to my story. What do you think of this story? Write your opinion in the comments. Tell me what you would do if you were in a similar situation. I think the man did the right thing. The main thing is to be happy, and people who betray should be punished.